Joining us now, Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin. She's a member of the Senate Appropriations, Commerce, and Health Committees. Very good to have you here with us this morning.
Great to be here.
So since you're on the Appropriations Committee, you're the perfect person to ask. Is the continued impoundment by DOJ of funds authorized and appropriated by Congress, is that a constitutional violation of Article 1 powers?
It absolutely is. And it is so clear in Article 1 that Congress makes the laws, passes the budgets and the appropriation bills, and it is the administration, the president, who implements and administers those. And we're seeing conflict there. Started with that federal funding freeze. And of course, lawsuits were filed immediately, but the harm occurred. We had Head Starts in Wisconsin that closed, 250 families in Waukesha, Wisconsin, displaced for a week because they couldn't access the federal funding to run their Head Start program. And in the courts, of course, we got a stay of those freezes. We got a rescission of the OMB directive.
Has the funding started back?
It has. Most of the portals have reopened. However, some were so archaic in terms of the IT infrastructure that they didn't open immediately, even though I think the intent was to. But we're seeing impoundment in other areas. We're seeing, the closure of agencies like USAID, and, firing people, not necessarily impoundment, but this is by an unelected, unaccountable organization. I mean, we got to remember DOJ, the Department of Government Efficiency, is not an official organization of any sort. And Elon Musk, they claim, is not the head of it, but he clearly is calling the shots. He's not elected.
Right.
There's no accountability here. And some of the contracts that have been canceled have resulted in business going to his operations. Corruption at the highest levels right there out in the open.
So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but I think this is important for viewers to know. Not only does this seem to be unconstitutional because these are Article 1 powers, it also breaks the law. When
the impoundment law.
When Nixon tried to impound funds, Congress passed a law in 1974, the Impoundment Act of 74, that explicitly states a president can't do this.
Exactly. And I think they are trying to break it to create a case that they ultimately bring up to the Supreme Court. And I hope the Supreme Court would stand firmly with Article 1 and the Impoundment Act. But I think his top advisors have said that they think it's unconstitutional. And we will probably see this play out at some point during this Trump term.
So, by the way, if I can just say, none other than William Rehnquist said that the impounding of funds by the president was a breach of Article 1 powers.
Yeah,
William Rehnquist.
Not exactly.
And Justice Roberts will be key in this, in terms of the integrity of the court. And so we hope he's paying close attention to this.
Right.
Yeah, we will have to watch there. You obviously won in Wisconsin State that Donald Trump also won. These cuts here we're talking about, it's also slashing like Alzheimer's disease research, other health issues. Do you think that the people who voted for Donald Trump, this is what they cast their ballot for? Because there's also rumors of Medicaid cuts. We might even hear from Trump in his speech tomorrow night to Congress.
On Medicaid and Medicare, Trump a little over a week ago said on Fox News, I'm not touching Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And he said it multiple times. The next morning, he endorsed the Republican House budget, which calls for nearly $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid.
How does that impact rural health care in Wisconsin and across the country?
It will devastate critical access hospitals in rural areas. Nursing homes will have to close. Remember that 8 million seniors depend on Medicaid, especially when they need skilled nursing care. And a third of all children are on Medicaid. Adults with disabilities often are on Medicaid for their health care and transportation needs. And so I can tell you our phones are ringing off the hook. My guest for the State of the Union tomorrow will be a woman with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer who relies on Medicaid for her treatment. She is terrified about the possible impacts of a cut to Medicaid because it will mean either she and her family go bankrupt or she'll stop treatment.
Senator, I wanted to ask you about Democrats finding their voice and footing against this. None of us in civics class, none of us in college were quite prepared for what we're seeing now. This kind of anti-constitutional coup, this unelected billionaire dictating policy, standing in the cabinet office talking about accidentally cutting Ebola funding. But I think a lot of people have felt like Democrats don't quite know how to speak to quite this level of severity. And I think a lot of people I meet feel very undefended. They feel kind of rampaged by the right and undefended by the left. I know you and your colleagues are doing things are being done, there are meetings, there are committees, but at just a very visceral level, I would say most lay Democrats that I meet feel just very undefended, feel it's not clear, there's no briefings, there's no shadow cabinet, a lot of different ideas have been proposed. Do you think there's truth in that feeling, even though you and your colleagues are doing something? And how close are Democrats to figuring out a way to respond to this moment that would address that?
So Steve Bannon and Steve Miller, advising the president, said, we are going to flood the zone. And we're seeing that. And we've never, how many announcements each day, and especially on Friday nights and over the weekends. But there are sort of three-pronged strategy for all of this, and that is the courts. We're just talking about the strategy in the courts to make sure that these actions are constitutional and lawful, and the Congress. And we're limited in what we can do because we're in the minority in both houses, but you do require a supermajority to pass most laws in the Senate. So 60 votes, we have leverage there. And our constituents. And as I said, my phones are ringing off the hook. We're organizing folks and saying, don't just call me, call my Republican counterpart, call your congresspeople. They're attending these town hall meetings are because people are organizing and understand the critical nature of their voice. And I just think back to the first Trump administration. It was the people and the Congress and the Democrats who saved the Affordable Care Act. And we're going to have to do the same on Medicaid. We're going to have to do the same against DOJ's indiscriminate firing of people who keep our veterans healthy, who keep our airspace safe, and are on the front lines of fighting the avian flu outbreak.
Just on the question of making people feel defended.
Yes.
And have communication. Do you think there's a role for maybe the Democrats appointing one person, a gifted communicator, a Pete Buttigieg or someone else, to do a daily briefing, something to actually centralize all these many good things that are happening, but a lot of people are not feeling like they know what the Democrats' response is.
So I have long faulted my own party for not being as message focused as my Republican counterparts, who will go and say the same thing over and over again. But we're getting there. We've held the floor. We've held more all-nighters than I've had since college, just in the last couple of weeks, on the floor, holding the floor, talking about some of the nominees that are very dangerous, as well as noting the consequence of proposals like cutting Medicaid.
So, Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
what
being
you're
here.
doing.
Great.